Hi there, it's Helen Pollock from EasyBuild here, and I'm joined by Adam Burchnall, who is the Finance Director from T&W Civil Engineering Limited. Thanks so much for joining me today.
No problem at all.
So I wanted to ask you a few questions, Adam, about the implementation of EasyBuild at T&W.
Yeah.
And the first question I want to ask is, what issues led you to look at implementing a solution like EasyBuild?
Okay, so there's probably a number of factors really that kind of got us to where we are now. I joined the company only about sort of 15 months ago, and spent a few months kind of understanding what our processes and systems were. And it kind of turned out that we were operating on a rather a kind of, I suppose, an old version of Sage that wasn't really appropriate for the size of our business. It was something that 10 years ago was perfectly fine, but as the business has grown, it kind of struggled to cope with the volume of data, but also in kind of producing the information that we needed at sort of a senior level. Coupled with that, our ordering system on the procurement side was a kind of hand built by our IT support, and it didn't integrate directly with our accounting system. So we were operating on two separate systems, a little bit clunky and basic, slow, and just kind of meant that things took longer than they should, but also that we couldn't get sort of real time information out of them. It was very much kind of reporting on a end of the month basis and looking backwards, but you kind of didn't really get a snapshot at any point in time during the month of kind of where you were at. So we wanted a all-in-one solution that would cover all of the sort of the requirements that we'd have. But equally, we didn't want something that was like overly I'm going to say overly complicated. That's not a criticism of EasyBuild; it's a compliment. But because we were used to quite a basic system before, and I think the biggest challenge is the cultural behavioural change. I didn't want it to go from one extreme to the other, because ultimately, what we do as a business isn't that complicated. It's pretty standard each month, really. So it's just kind of making sure it did the fundamentals that we wanted.
It's funny, it's something we hear all the time, actually, that businesses have legacy systems that
Yeah.
no longer really work because the business has grown, and also the lack of integration between different parts of the system holds businesses back, and they can't have an instant snapshot of where
Yeah.
the business is on a particular day. So moving on from that, so how did the implementation process go? And really right from the planning phase through to aftercare?
Okay. Yeah, it was an interesting time. I'm not saying that I'd want to do it again immediately, but I think overall, if I'll kind of go into more detail, but overall it went smoothly, and I was happy with how it went. It was the first time for me changing a system over. So as I was kind of driving it our side, I was slightly nervous at times, just making sure that I was ticking all the boxes and make sure covering everything off that we needed to do. But I felt that the process was kind of well organized from an EasyBuild point of view. They were happy to kind of handhold, I suppose, where needed, and just kind of make sure that we were keeping on track with kind of where we needed to be and what we needed to do. We obviously had training days, which varied depending on what modules you go for. And I think they worked. I think we had a little bit of a challenge, and other businesses will be the same in terms of when you're in a meeting room doing training on a system on a screen, certain people will engage and see where you're trying to get to. Other people aren't used to learning in that kind of environment, maybe. So maybe after half an hour, the attention goes a little bit, and what you assume people are taking in. Actually, when you then come to actually testing it, it turns out that not as much has gone in as you thought. But I think that's just dependent on the people. So one thing I did suggest to Franco at the time was maybe with the training and stuff, it might help sometimes if there are laptops available that could be brought out to the session so people can actually have a go while you're doing the training, because I think people generally learn better that way. Unfortunately, as a business, we don't have laptops throughout, so we kind of were unable to do that. But I think that probably would have helped some people. But other than that, no, it went well. I think we stuck pretty much to the timeline. We didn't have a particularly strenuous target. I think it was about 6 months. Just wanted to get it right rather than sort of rush it in. And we weren't didn't have a strict date in mind. It got pushed back a couple of times. But that wasn't necessarily due to kind of anything on the EasyBuild side. There was a development in place for a requirement that we had. And that's another thing, actually. We, in terms of our supply data, we have a number of suppliers that the products they provide are not just price dependent based on the supplier, they're also price dependent based on the site that they're delivering to. And so I don't think the system at the time could cope with that number of variables. But Jane and the development team put that in place so that when we did go live, that was there and that we could load using a template, site and supplier specific prices. So that was really good. Obviously, the EasyBuild very accommodating and understanding in terms of delivering that for us, because that was a big factor that we needed for go live. But no, it went well. The data migration wasn't as strenuous as I thought. I was a little bit apprehensive on making sure everything balanced. But I had one of the production team in for the whole day when we were loading the data and checking balances. I also, although probably wasn't needed, got our accountants in as well because they'd got a bit more history on the company. And within a day, we were kind of happy that everything was in and correct. And that was for 3 companies as well. So we went live with 3 different companies. So that caused me a little bit of nervousness beforehand, but actually on the day turned out to be pretty straightforward. So
that's brilliant.
Yeah, and then in terms of since go live, I think the support generally has been really good. So we sort of tend to find is the first week or 2 is you get a lot of queries from users. And I generally kind of channeled the queries through myself before going to EasyBuild, because it might be something that we could have dealt with internally. So I generally got more questions week 1, week 2. But then once people were familiar with the system and comfortable using it, actually those sort of died down after sort of week 3 and 4, really. So I think the support team probably got bombarded with requests initially and thought, who the hell is this? But yeah, hopefully they've kind of just dropped to a sort of a normal level, really. I wouldn't even say we have anything sort of weekly anymore.
Brilliant. So overall, how has the reception been from your colleagues?
A lot better than I kind of expected. We've got people that have been in the business a long time. We're sort of talking 10 years plus. They've been using the same system throughout that 10 years. And as you know, kind of people are generally reluctant to change. So I was very confident that the system would do what we needed it to do and we'd be able to use it, no problem. My biggest kind of nervousness was that I didn't know how people would take to it and that kind of thing. And I didn't want to disrupt processes that were fairly established in the business. But I think once you get people's buy-in, I involved the various departments through the process. So when we looked at the procurement side, we got our head of buying in and a couple of members of the buying team, the same with plant, same with account. So I think by involving people in the process, them having a say in what it needs to do and how you do things, then actually then they are a lot more receptive to it. And also kind of just trying to explain to them where we're trying to get to and why we're trying to do what we do. And we're not just doing it to make people's lives difficult and give them something else to learn, but that there is a genuine sort of business reason behind it. And yeah, it doesn't take people long, I think, to see the benefits. Our biggest users really are our accounts teams and our buying team. And they kind of, their job day in, day out is fairly similar in terms of what they do. So within 2 or 3 days of placing orders or putting invoices on the system, you've kind of got a good grasp of it. And all of a sudden, actually, it's not really taking you any longer than it was before. And now 3 or 4 months down the line, it's even quicker than it was. So.
Brilliant. So it's probably a good time to ask you, Adam, what efficiencies has EasyBuild created for T&W?
I think the main one for us is just kind of the integration between the various departments. I wouldn't say at the moment it's created kind of, and it's not something we were looking for. We weren't looking for massive time efficiencies in terms of, I want it to take half the time to put an order on or anything like that, because actually that was fairly quick before, and there's only so much you can gain from doing that. You have to put in a certain amount of information, and it gets to a point where you can't do that any quicker. So, but for us, it was the fact that the two systems are now one. It means that we can give sites better visibility of what we're ordering and what's coming in. So they kind of are confident that they're going to get their deliveries on time and it's the correct product. In terms of our invoicing, previously we were hard copy filing everything. So we've got hundreds and hundreds of boxes of invoices. Now we've kind of on a multi-phase approach with this, but at the moment we just scan in the invoices so that there's a electronic copy attached to every transaction. So it seems like not that big a deal, but from my point of view and the commercial team, when they're looking for an invoice on their job, they can find it instantly and they haven't got to dig around folders, which actually helps. But we are going to look at, in terms of the efficiency point of view, there are more efficiencies with, I think, OCR and TradeX integration. So that's kind of on the next stage for us. And the other benefits really are commercially, we get that kind of view of our job costs throughout the month, because when we place an order, it puts a committed cost on. So we don't have to wait for all our invoices to come in to give us an idea of where that job's performing. So it just, as a business, it just allows us to have so much more information with which to make informed decisions, really. So that's the biggest benefit to us, is more the information coming out of the system.
Brilliant. Thank you. So you alluded to what's next for TW and EasyBuild. So maybe you could tell me a little bit more about that. And I'm wondering, where does mobile technology fit into that picture?
Yeah, no, definitely. So one of them, and this was one that we kind of planned on revisiting from the start, was just our purchase invoices. So we get probably 100,000 plus a year purchase invoices. So previously they've always been manual processed. And that is still happening to some extent now, although it is quicker because it's linked to an ordering system. But I do want to look at the next stage in terms of whether that information can be pulled through from a scan copy or from an email with a PDF attachment. So that's kind of the next phase that we're looking at. Because I'd sooner people in the accounts team be focused on sort of value add activities, really. And to me, putting an invoice on doesn't really add any value. It's just replicating information. So if we can find a way of doing that quicker, it allows people's time to be spent on areas that will benefit the business more. So that's one area that we're looking at. I think previously TradeX was the option, but I understand from Franco now that there's a sort of more as an OCR functionality that could be an option as well. So I'm trying to arrange an online meeting, given the current situation, to sort of go through that a little bit in detail. And then in terms of the mobile, I think previously we didn't really consider it. So our staff are mainly office based, with the exception of the commercial team that will be sort of to and from site. But one thing we are looking at now is the site requisitions. So rather than orders being phoned in or emailed in from site, that option for them to have most of your product catalogue, and then they can start the order process from site and do it that way. I think before we've been a bit reluctant, just because again it's based on that cultural change and behaviour. I think most businesses will be the same. We could look at half of our sites and say, yeah, they'd do it no problem. I'd find another 10% and go, there's no way they're ever going to do it. So that was more the limiting factor. But we are looking at it a little bit more now. And I think the reason we're doing that is because without it, I think in the industry, there's a lot of different terms for the same product. So sometimes when site order something through, they'll call it one thing. A buying team might know it as another thing. Our supplier might know it as something else completely different. So there's a risk that somewhere along that process, we order the wrong product, which obviously causes inefficiencies and additional cost potentially on site. So if everybody was using the same generic product library that our suppliers have had involvement in, for example, then the risk of us misordering a product is kind of a lot lower, which means we should get a lot less like wastage and inefficiencies. So that's one of the main reasons we've started to look into that. I think we'll still have the challenge with the users on site, but we might roll it out to a few to start with and see where it goes from there, really.
That sounds great. So finally, I want to ask you, if you have industry colleagues who are perhaps sitting on the fence about implementing a solution like EasyBuild, what would you say to them?
I'd say it's something that you're best to go ahead with. I don't think you should rush into a decision by any means. We had obviously multiple suppliers in. I think Franco came in 3 or 4 times to talk to us. So it wasn't kind of first meeting, oh, this looks great, let's do it. I think that kind of the selection process is really important, and really understanding what your requirements are at that stage to make sure that the system does what you need it to do is crucial. And that's quite hard sometimes because, like for us, for example, previously we're quite limited because of the system we were using. So trying to think about what you want it to do that you've not been able to do before is quite hard. And sometimes you only actually realize things as you're going through the process. So spending a lot of time up front and involving people that do those roles day in, day out and know them better than anyone is really important, because then you have, right, this is my must-haves, this is my nice-to-haves. So that for me is really, really key. But then, yeah, it's a fairly long and challenging process in terms of the implementation. But I don't think anyone's ever going to do that smoothly, really. If they do, then fantastic. But it might be the more that something's been missed. But so yeah, I think being prepared for that. But I can say that once that is done and once it is live, then you can reap benefits from day one, really. So it is worth the kind of the challenge of going through that process, because once you've done it and if you've got it right, then you shouldn't have to do it again for a long time, if it is scalable with your business. So it is definitely worth investing that time, but just as long as you're prepared in advance, then I think that's the biggest thing. If you are rushing to a deadline or you aren't kind of fully aware of what you need, I think that's when it will become stressful and perhaps you might think that you've not made the right decision.
So it's a tailored solution, isn't it? And I guess that's the really important part of the pre-implementation process, is working together with EasyBuild and your colleagues to work out exactly what's needed so that the solution is perfectly tailored to your needs and hopefully your future needs as well.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things we toyed with is that we had various IT people say they could build us their own solution for our business, and there obviously are certain benefits to that. But we didn't want anything that was completely specific to us, because then the support function becomes a lot more challenging. If they retire or go and do something else, then actually all that knowledge is gone. So obviously one of the benefits with EasyBuild, it is technically off the shelf, but it is construction specific. So it's already tailored to most of our business processes because other ground workers already use it. And the 3 or 4 boxes that it might not tick at the start, they can be added to a development. And when they're developed, they are applied to every version of EasyBuild used by every client. So the support it's still a generic add-on to the system. It's not that your version of EasyBuild has got something different to somebody else's and you need a specific contact in support. It's a benefit to everybody. So we've got a couple of things sort of in progress with the development team now, which I just need to get an order returned. So obviously, yeah, EasyBuild are really accommodating in terms of adding things to the system, because they obviously want to support us as a client, but if it benefits us, it should benefit other clients that do the same thing that we do. So yeah, it can be added on as you go. And it isn't just because it won't do it at the start doesn't mean that it can't do it in the future.
Great. Oh, that's really good to hear. And I love the fact that you've said you will reap the benefits from day one. That's really powerful. So thank you so much for your time, Adam. I really appreciate it. And take care, and hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.